All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to take off. Almost clicked the Colts one, but I didn't. All right, we got two spinning wheels. Boom, boom. Welcome in, welcome in. It is the 25th of July. Goodness gracious. 7:42 a.m. It's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendall, and joined by on the other side of the screen there, Scott Kennedy. Scott, good morning to you. Happy Tuesday. How you doing? I feel like we've been ships passing in the night recently somewhat, but it's good to hang out and have a little normalcy here for today at least.
I know the schedule's been off a little bit, but it's going to have to get on a little bit because football's almost here.
Yep.
You mentioned it's like I was looking at it, I was like, wait a minute, first preseason games are just a little over 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, we're here, boys. We're here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's crazy. Still got obviously some fun stuff coming up this year. I got the Yosemite permits to climb Half Dome in September. Hopefully it's not on fire then. But with the snowpack they had this year, and also going to be out in Denver. Going to head there Colorado a little bit early. When we're coming out for the Broncos Packers game, so that'll be exciting as well to meet everybody. But I'll be up in Estes Park with my family a little bit before that. But let's say hello to some people joining in the chat. I made the classic error, a little bit of how the sausage is made for you guys. We make the stream and then we have to hit create broadcast on it. And I wrote everything up at like 6 a.m. my time, 7 a.m. your time. Like, okay, we're good to go. We'll go at 6:30 my time. Will be great. Come down here, sit at the computer at 6:32 or something. It's like, oh, didn't hit the final button. So
Yeah, and meanwhile, starting at 9 o'clock my time, I'm hitting refresh every 60 seconds to see if he's built the stream, and then I'm checking to see. Wait, did he say he's not? He's not supposed to be out today. What's going on?
I'm
You
here.
have 5 more minutes, and then I was like, I was going to build it, and I'm like, I'm not ready to go solo. Give me a little notice, and I can go solo. But especially in the morning when I was like, okay, well, we talk about the Wazurike, which we will again, but we hit on that a lot last night too. So
yeah,
good to have you here, Nick.
Yeah, the solo shows are good, especially because the chat is so good. But the shows are 10 times better when we can hang out together and talk a little ball. But speaking of the chat, let's say hello to everybody who's joined us so far today. We got our guy Jeremy Sean first in here, dropping. And if you guys are joining us this morning, drop a thumbs up on the way and say hello as well. Saying morning, boys. Anyone hedging their bets on this upcoming season? What do you mean by that, Jeremy? What do you mean by hedging your bets on this upcoming season? Like just as far as expectations go, or actually putting your money down somewhere, hedging your bets a little bit?
No, I think he means, are you lowering your expectations based on, some of the newness has worn off. Okay, we've got Sean Payton, the excitement. It's all going to be better. Wait a minute. There's still problems around this team, and there will continue to be upcoming problems. Well, I had a football coach that said, there are no problems. There's just obstacles we have yet to overcome. The defensive line is one of those, and we'll get into that one for sure.
Yeah. Been concerned about the defensive line on the show for a bit. Scott, you and I are both, I think, very much influenced by college football dominance as well in that a little bit, where honestly, I think in college football, the number one indicator of a great team is your talent on the defensive line versus the NFL, where it's a quarterback league. But very concerned overall about the Broncos defensive front talent entering the season. I had a little bit of pushback on Twitter about this, but I said I think that this Broncos defensive front, edge rushers and interior defensive line included, might be the least talented group this Broncos team has fielded since 2010, which is a long time ago. Now, I think on paper they're better than the 2010 team, but this might be the most concerned I've been about the edge rushers and the interior defensive line since pre-Von Miller in Denver back in 2010.
Yeah, I think the concern is fair. If you're lining it up and just playing Madden, the talent is probably there. But then you talk about the concern about injuries. It's like, a healthy Randy Gregory can be every bit as dominant, if not more so, than Bradley Chubb. But how much can you count on him? I think Zach Allen can be an upgrade over what you had last year in Draymond Jones. I really think he can, but he hasn't proven that yet.
And he's been injured too.
And then the depth is frightening. The depth is frightening.
Yep.
It's not even the depth right now. I mean, like you said, if you're in a 4-man front and you got Jonathan Harris listed or, as one of the guys out there, you're like, I was trying to cut him about this time last year, Nick.
Yeah. So Yeah, we'll get into the Wazurike stuff, but good to see you, Jeremy. Make sure you guys are dropping the thumbs up, saying hello on the way in. Bama X is in the house. He knows a little something about dominant defensive fronts helping you just create dynasties in college football. Bama X says, morning Broncos country. Good to see you, Bama X. We got our guy Michael Ronquillo coming in here with the star saying good morning, Nick and Scott, on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em with the blue heart, the orange heart, and the salute. God bless you, Michael. Thank you so much for the support, the constant support in here. I mean, you are definitely on our, as Chad likes to say, our Mount Rushmore. So we appreciate you coming in and saying hello. Always appreciate the hello after the show as well. You know, a little bit of an echo effect on that, saying good show today. We appreciate you. I'm giving you a thank you in advance to that one. Wang Chung 21 saying BFB into my veins. It's so good. Well, make sure that you are being a little bit safe. You know, you don't want too much BFB into the veins. I think, what is it? Any medicine at too much of a dose is a poison. But we appreciate you coming in and saying hello to us, Wang Chung. Good to see you. Facebook user, not sure who this is, but I'm guessing. Oh gosh, who's been having the issues with Facebook user?
Is Benjamin Flores is one,
yes.
Ernie Mays is another.
Yes. It didn't say Broncos country only or
Right.
Broncos for life only. So I'm guessing this is Benjamin Flores. So hope you fellas are doing well. Excited to get football started. Me too. Facebook user, me too. Dave Glassman in the house with us hearts. Good to see you. Albert Knopper's in here. Michaela Israel, always good to see you. Good morning, guys. Good morning to you, Albert, also. Keith Brugman saying, gentlemen, do you think it was a gamble not addressing the defensive line, especially now with Wazurike out for the year and burying the lead here a little bit? That's the big story today. I didn't want to just harp on it too much because I'm sure they did it a lot yesterday, and we'll have a chance to talk about it too. But Broncos 2022 4th-round pick, interior defensive lineman from Iowa State, EOA Wazurike, has been suspended for the year for gambling on NFL games. I don't know the specifics. I don't know if it was like in a team facility, in a hotel, or anything like that, but they are educated on this coming in. He gambled, and now he is out for the year, has not been cut yet. But the Broncos' interior defensive line concerns get that much more problematic entering this year.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, we mentioned it before. You know, we were one of the first ones to really stand up and say, "Oh my goodness!" And you brought it to my attention, and then I started looking at it. I'm like, "Whoa, yeah, the defensive line is a little bit scary." But Keith, you say, do you think it was a gamble not addressing the defensive line?
And I see now it's a pun. Good job, Keith. Thank you. It's a gamble.
You're yeah, I got it.
I did not.
I didn't get it yet. No, I'm reading through it, and I'm trying to bring up one of the supers coming up. I'm trying to bring up a list of free agents that we'll talk about, and Spot Rack's timing out for me right now. But to answer this question, it's not done. I've said from the get-go, expect to hear Broncos have signed 2. Now, Nick, I'll say 3. I expect 3 guys on the defensive line that are 300 plus pounds to be signed between now and September 1st. Whether they end up being starters, whatnot, watch for the cuts. I'll say September 5th because the cuts did knock it down to the 53, pulling guys off of practice squads, whatnot. They're not done. Were they able to get the guys they wanted up till now? Probably not. So I'm not going to call it a mistake. I'll call it a mistake if it goes up until week 1 and you haven't brought anybody in. But you have to prioritize things. And, you know, if the guy's not there in the draft pick or it's not there in free agency, what are you going to do? You can't, don't force it. Don't bring in a guy that can't play just to take up a roster spot. That's not any good either. There will be players that can come in and help this team that will be available, that are available over the course of the next 6 weeks. This Broncos team is not done. Who are those guys going to be? I don't know. Some of them will be a surprise. Cap casualty, you know, cut from team X, Y, and Z. They're not done. Will it be a mistake if they leave it alone? Absolutely. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, they'll have to do something, but I'll be curious to follow the lesser known players on the defensive line. And fortunately for me, maybe unfortunately watching the product, but fortunately for me, I think for you too, Scott, our favorite positions to really watch and dig into are the defensive line guys. So the fact that that's probably going to be pretty high up on the list of positions that we need to monitor this offseason means that we're gonna know what we're talking about, and we're gonna know if they have it or not. So a little bit concerned about it. And just to be fully transparent, it's not like the Broncos lost DJ Jones for the year. It's not like they lost Zach Allen for the year. Wazurike was a second-year player who started to come on a bit towards the end of last season. He was an older draft pick, I believe, at 24 years old coming out of Iowa State, but somebody that could had a really large chance to take a step forward in terms of role and responsibility and snaps this season. Not that the Broncos were depending on him, but now you have one. It's like you're playing Yahtzee or something, or you have to roll a 2, and you had 3 dice before, and now you're down to 2. Your chances of rolling that 2 went down by 1 factor. So hopefully the Broncos can figure it out. And it's too bad about Wazurike. We're not sure. It's not a guarantee he would have been a big player this season. He could have been a total bust, but is what it is. And the Broncos are now looking for some help there. We got Daniel Swafford coming in here. Good to see you, Daniel. Saying, morning, guys. With the suspension of Wazurike, who do you hope we go after for depth? And do the Broncos cut Wazurike as well? So far, players have been, I think almost every single player that's been hit with this year-long suspension has been cut. That being said, I think Wazurike might be the highest draft pick that has been done. I'm not sure about. Jameson Williams.
The
like
guy that the Colts cut, the cornerbacks the Colts cut, I think was higher up on the list of priorities than Wazurike would have been.
Okay, I'm not sure what draft pick the Colts guy was. I know Wazurike was an early 4th.
Yeah, I mean, typically you get knocked down a peg is the punishment. So if you were a starter, okay, you're gonna sit the bench. If you were a bench, you might get moved. But if you were on the bubble anyway, and the only reason that Wazurike would not be on the bubble right now is because he was a draft pick and he's cheap and cost controlled. But let's be honest, he was on the bubble for talent wise, for production wise. He's probably gone. Daniel, when I was looking this up, I went over to the cap. I had a little grin when I looked at available free agents and looked at the bottom up of guys that are available that weren't making any money. And I swear to God, Nick, 5 of those guys were on the Falcons scrap heap last year. Were guys that they put in the poverty franchise who was scraping together, shaking couch cushions out, trying to find money to pay these guys. As I'm looking through some of these names, Derek Tangelo, Perion Winfrey's there, Mike Pennell, Tyler Davison, all those guys played for the Falcons at one point or another while they didn't have any money. Jonathan Kongbo is a guy that could be brought back. I believe he had a cup of coffee with the Broncos. So there will be depth guys in there. You're going to save some of that free agent money for maybe I can pull off somebody that gets waived and throw him a 1-year, $6 or $7 million deal and bring in and really help this team.
Yeah, I do want to go back a little bit. I am curious to see if they do cut a Wazurike. I think I'm 50-50 right now. Another big reason, I'm not sure about the specifics of the Colts cornerback, but Wazurike still has 3 years of control left, and he's not going to count against the roster. So I don't think, and he's also not getting paid big money. So
right.
I think it's probably better to just stash him for a year. My big question on this is what happens to the year of eligibility? Like when a guy comes in to the league, like Christopher Allen came in last season, and his for the Broncos undrafted free agent edge rusher, and because he was a non-football injury list,
Nothing.
I think he gets
nothing. Look, think Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's year didn't change. He was still playing on his 5th-year deal, and it didn't count against. That's why he's going to be 30 years old when he's playing in the first year of his second contract.
So next year the Broncos will still have 3 years of control?
I think so.
So that's another reason to hold on to him, just for the cost controlled of the years. So
Isaiah Rodgers is the mystery cornerback we keep talking about, and he was a 6th-round pick, but he also has started 45 games in his first 3 years. So when I think of, forget the draft pick, think of this was a starter that they waived.
Yeah.
And he probably didn't have 3 years left on his contract. He probably had 1 year left on his contract, and that was it. Being a third-year guy going into his 4th year.
Yeah. Yeah, so my gut would be to hold on to him just because of the years of control and the fact that he doesn't count against the roster or anything. But we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Regardless, the Broncos are going to have to address the defensive line. They probably did have to before this news, and here we are now. Did want to give a shout out to Clayton Huron, saying, morning, guys. Smash that like button and share to all platforms. Today is a huge milestone for me. 1 year sober, sticking with my guns. 10 to 14 win season for the Broncos. Well, Clayton, 10 to 14 is great, but the 1 year sober is even better. Congrats to you, man. That takes a lot of conviction and work. I'm really proud of you, and congrats to you and your family for that. That's a lot of consistency.
We share that in common, Clayton. One day at a time, man. It's Don't try and get through the rest of your life today. It's tough. So just one day at a time. You don't have to get through tomorrow. You just need to get through today, one day at a time.
Cool. Congrats to you, Clayton, and shout out to you as well, Scott. Talking about Scott, we got Scott Lind coming in here. Dinger Dave 88 over on Twitch says, hi from Scotland, guys. Good morning to you, Dinger. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. We appreciate you coming in. And I'll say it is Benjamin Flores here. I'm not sure what's going on, man. I hope you're doing well. Keith comes in here and says, flipping the other side of the ball, what are your thoughts on Andrew Norwell? Only problem is he plays powers positions. Andrew Norwell was a really pretty good guard for the Panthers, got signed a huge deal with the Jags, and didn't really live up to the contract with the Jags. He was a part of like a super offensive line for that Ohio State team that won the national championship behind the legs of Ezekiel Elliott. Their offensive line also was unbelievable that season. So Andrew Norwell, left guard. I'm still pretty concerned about the overall depth and versatility of the backup interior offensive line right now, because your number one guy is probably, is it Luke Wattenberg? Is it Alex Forsyth? Is it Cam Fleming as your backup guards? I mean, the depth on the interior offensive line is concerning for me. So if he wants to come in and for a really cheap contract, maybe he can play some left guard and right guard. I'm interested. I'm more interested in somebody who has some center versatility as well, and I'm not sure Norwell has that. But anywhere the Broncos can get better, that's fine. He's probably holding out for a spot, though, where he'd have a chance to come in and start, where that's not the case for the Broncos.
Yeah, I would think so. He earned $9 million, it looks like, last year. Or is it 5.5? I'm not used to looking at over the cap. Spot Rack is choking out on me. So he may have made the 5 last year. Sorry, Jeremy. Jeremy, make sure, I think Nick's going to type in, hit the refresh, but we did start. We were a few minutes late. But I've seen some reactions to our comments, so I know there's some people in here. Norwell would be a really good idea, but he's not good. Again, he's going to want to hold out for a starting position. And if that doesn't happen, then again, Nick, we mentioned before, you can sign guys, you can sign these types that are holding out. I want a starting position. We didn't get one. How about $2 million and you can come here and compete? And frankly, you're going to play. You know, who plays 17 games every snap these days on the offensive line? It's pretty rare. You know, you come in here, you be our number 3 guy, you're gonna get a chance. You're gonna get a chance to play.
Yeah. And playing, for the Broncos right now, the thing is about trying to convince a guard to come in here is that I do feel pretty solidified with those guard spots. I mean, just with the investments they have. Quinn Miners is somebody still up and coming, unless I think he can play center, but I don't see that happening. There's been no real indication of that other than, I think it was, Jesse Palmer mentioned after the Broncos signed Powers that the Broncos were still looking at guards, which to me would mean that they at least were considering Miners kicking over to center, if reading the tea leaves on that one. So anything's possible, but just there's been no indication that that's they're in their minds since then. But interior offensive line depth is a big concern for me. If you are one injury away from a pretty concerning player there, given what we saw from Wattenberg last season and the unknown of third to last pick in the entire draft, Alex Forsyth.
And looking at Norwell, he's played 8,400 snaps in his career at left guard. He's played 86 snaps at other, 82 at right guard, and 4 at right tackle.
Yeah.
None at center.
Yep. So again, not totally against it, especially if he wants to come in and work on some versatility. And this was one reason, Scott, that I was like, and he struggled last year. Don't get me wrong. But like, you would love to have a Graham Glasgow as your interior rotational guy where he can come in and play 2 games. He's not great, but he can play center and guard spots and be your 7th offensive lineman. You're not paying him like the 7th. I know that. I'm talking about like a guy in a close to league minimum for that level of ability. But that typecast on this
blood,
team.
Man. I understand what you're saying, but I'm like, if I'm going to get mediocre, I want it to be someone new that's mediocre, that has that has something else to prove. Glasgow's comfortable. Put somebody, challenge them, put them in a new environment. I know this is a new environment with Sean Payton and all that type of stuff, but this team needs new blood. Yeah. They don't need the same voices in there, the same faces. And they brought in a bunch of new players in there. Like I said, think of it like a Madden. If I've got a 65, let's say Glasgow's a 65 and he can be a 65. Yeah, he's got versatile. Yeah, he's cheap, but man, I can find a 65 somewhere else from a 26-year-old somewhere, that is hungry, not on the back end of their careers.
Well, I would say right now I don't see that guy on this team. It's a possibility, but I think the body types specifically for the scheme, I don't see the typecast of a power scheme able guard center type, and that concerns me. Obviously, we're talking a lot of trenches today, but that's near and dear to Scott and I's heart. We got Philip Hogginson coming in here saying, "Good morning, guys. Good to see you, Philip." Greg Smith is in the house. Good to see you. Greg says, "Good morning, Broncos for breakfast. Denver Broncos for life. You doing well?" Jeremy got it going. That's good to hear. Good to see you, Jeremy. Daniel Vasquez in the house, and good morning from H-Town. Anxious to see how the Broncos will do this upcoming season. Let's go Broncos. Denver Broncos for life. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. And said, "Wow, you are there. Nothing there after 7:35. What's up?" We are here. Hopefully it's all good for you as well, Kevin Gray. Good to see you, Kevin. Denver Broncos for life for you. And he says MHH for life. Pivoting real quick, we'll come back to Wazurike here, but I did want to talk about this article from Eric Edholm from NFL.com. He talks about the biggest challenge for every team this season. And for the Broncos, he talks about striking a balance with Russell Wilson being the biggest challenge. Eric writes, in Seattle, Wilson became one of the league's best playmakers, even as he sometimes was held back by the Seahawks system. That's maybe debatable. Last season in Denver, with Wilson having more autonomy over the offense, he had arguably his poorest NFL campaign. Enter Sean Payton, who hasn't really had a quarterback like Wilson before, but whose offenses were some of the more productive in the NFL in New Orleans for the last 15 years. Payton's roots are in the West Coast offense, but he regularly varied formations and used a heavy dose of shotgun with a wide run game and short intermediate pass game as key staples. Payton also has tailored his offense to varying skill sets, as he saw when he called plays for Taysom Hill. Payton and Wilson have been two of the best at what they do in the past, but can they find common ground in the present and end the quarterback slump that will likely define how far the Broncos can go in 2023? I like Eric. I think Eric does a good job at NFL.com. I think that and given the parameters of the body of text that he can fit in there, you can't add much nuance to that, but I want to push back a little bit in terms of how he typecasted Sean Payton in the pass game in this, talking about the shotgun and the quick pass game. Early on, when Drew Brees first came to New Orleans, there was a lot of under center. There was a lot of 5 and 7 step drops. There was a lot of play action. There was a lot of run game. If you guys recall the Reggie Bush, Deuce McAllister show there early on in Sean Payton's time in New Orleans, it became the Drew Brees quick pass game in the second half of Drew Brees' career there in New Orleans. So I think we have seen this type of offense that will fit what Russell Wilson does. Will they find a balance? I think it's more about personalities than style of offensive play that we're going to have questions about this offseason.
Well, I think one of the best things Sean Payton does is gets the most out of what he has. Mm-hmm. We talk about Drew Brees a lot, but he says different style of quarterbacks, and you mentioned Taysom Hill. What about Jameis Winston? Jameis Winston is a pure drop back passer. He doesn't move hardly at all. Teddy Bridgewater is a little bit of a hybrid. He went 4-0, earned a huge contract under Sean Payton. So again, I was more impressed with Sean Payton when he didn't have Drew Brees. That's when I became a believer. Okay, you've got Drew Brees. Drew Brees is great, and you helped make Drew Brees great. I get that, and you've helped turn around one of the worst franchises in the NFL and turn him into an NFC powerhouse. But he was successful with multiple quarterbacks with multiple skill sets. Mm-hmm. And that's what sold me. And him being there the year after Russell Wilson falls flat on his face is a good thing, because you don't have to worry about him coming in and there being an ego clash. And I came here to do this, and this is what I'm going to do. Russell Wilson has been humbled. Russell Wilson is not going to come in and is not going to be demanding anything under Sean Payton. He's going to be, coach, help me. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. And the timing on this is good as well, Nick.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I am curious to see, again, it's more about the personalities. Will Russell Wilson have the full buy-in? And even more so, is Sean Payton going to buy what Russell Wilson is doing, and will it be good enough? Because this is, as we've said on the show 1,000 times, this is Sean Payton's team, and every chance he's had, softball questions to really, speak super kindly or, just hype up Russell Wilson, he's been like, yeah, he's our quarterback right now, and we have him, and he's gonna be fine. Just
He hasn't really talked up anybody for the most part.
yeah,
He's warmed to some of the guys, but and that's a good. He's not treating Russell Wilson any differently than he's treating anybody else, and
mhm.
isn't that what we all want to see? But you know who treats us differently? Gary Leeds Palmer. Thank you, Gary. He's coming in with a big yellow super chat. Says, "Good morning, Nick and Scott. Go Broncos and buck 'em." Thank you, sir. Hope you are doing well today. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, we really do appreciate the support, Gary. Thank you for coming in and choosing Broncos for Breakfast as your favorite show. I'm going to put those words in your mouth, and you put your money where your mouth is there. So I'm going to assume that. Thank you so much, Gary. We appreciate you. Good to see you. David Youngkin in here saying, good morning, Broncos country. Hope you're doing well. And Keith coming in about a defensive question. He says, last question, does Vance Joseph run more stunts on defense than we saw from Ejiro Evero? Felt like we were predictable up front last year. I think the Broncos had the NFL is really kind of pisses me off sometimes because they're pretty gatekeepy with a lot of their advanced stats. Like you'll see a really cool graphic that Next Gen Stats will put out, like GPS data or like predictive rate on cover 2 blitzes or something like that. And it's like, where the heck is this data? Well, it's all proprietary information that the teams pay a lot of money for that you can get. But guess what? Us peons that are not, part of these massive billion-dollar organizations don't get the data. We get what we get. So information like the stunts and the blitzes, it'd be awesome to see the EPA per play on that, the rate of the type of blitzes, et cetera, et cetera. What I can tell you is that the Broncos, I think, had the 4th highest blitz rate of any team in the NFL last season, and they were one of the more successful blitzing teams in the NFL last season as well. They played a lot of cover 3 and cover 6 on first and second down, and then they'd go into a more aggressive cover 1 look on third down. Now that dropped a bit as the season went on, and the defensive front talent pretty much just fell off an absolute cliff.
Was depleted.
Yes. Yep. So that will be interesting. But I got to say that from my understanding of the data, Keith, your assumption that we were predictable up front last season was not super true. We saw a lot of blitzes from Jewel, Alexander Singleton, got the edge rushers that are a little bit more of the hybrid dropping back in space, et cetera, et cetera. So Vance Joseph will also be a blitz-ish oriented guy, more of a pressure package. And part of that's probably because you're better in the secondary in terms of your talent there versus your upfront talent. Like you can leave Pat Surtain on island, you feel pretty good. How many of the defensive pass rushers can you say, okay, we got a one-on-one matchup, they're going to win every time? I don't know if the Broncos have that guy. So I think we will see a more defensive, pressure-oriented defense this season. The big question will be matching up run fits and coverage with the pressure packages. And we've heard Vance Joseph talk about that, where he's been picking the brain and talking a lot with ascending defensive mind superstar Christian Parker and how they can work that match quarters defense, the Vic Fangio influence and the Ejiro Evero influence into what Vance Joseph wants to do in terms of more of the pressure up front. What it looks like, we don't know just yet, but know that Christian Parker is having a large influence on what's happening with run fits and coverages on the back end.
And Nick hit on it with personnel for me. Predictable's okay as long as my guy can beat your guy. Mm-hmm. And if the Broncos are lining up with Baron Browning and Randy Gregory on the outside, and Zach Allen plays really well, I can be predictable. That doesn't mean you can beat me. We talk about this on the other side of the line. If I've got a really strong offensive line, I can tell you I'm going to run the ball, try and stop me. You might not be able to. And then when you do, I'm just going to go over the top. So predictable can be okay as long as it's not predictably over aggressive. It's this situation, they're going to blitz. Okay, well, I've got a hot route and I'm going to beat these guys and you're going to be in trouble. So I'm not too worried about the predictable, but like as Nick said, and again, it's still football. Sometimes it is predictable. It's up to you to beat me. If my guy can beat your guy, it doesn't matter if you know what I'm going to do. What's predictable is, Tom Brady's going to throw the ball around in the 4th. Okay. He's still pretty tough to stop. Let me see here. One Albert Knoppers comes in. He says, so from what I hear, you guys are on the same page as I, that Lloyd Cushionberry could be the weakest link in our O-line. I'm not even going to say could, Albert. Could be. There is no could be in there. Lloyd Cushionberry is the weakest link in your offensive line, at least on paper right now, unless, McGlinchey and Powers cannot acclimate at all to the Denver Broncos and fall flat on their face. But the way they played last year, they played better than Lloyd Cushionberry did as a center with Denver Broncos has ever played. It's astounding to me how many chances he's gotten and not been replaced because he hasn't been good, and this is going on his 4th year. This is a player who could be, he was a 4-year starter with the Denver Broncos, and now he can't get a contract. They didn't renew him. They went and signed big money or drafted a guy. He's out there in the market. Why hasn't anybody signed Lloyd Cushionberry? Nick, does that sound like anybody else we know?
Yeah, I mean,
Who else is out there started a bunch of games for the Denver Broncos and now isn't anywhere?
Dalton Reisner. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Dalton Reisner. I don't want to disparage him too much because maybe he wants to come in and take some chances at center as well. But it's back to your point of new blood out there. But hey, he's the 26, 27-year-old at least who maybe can play some spots. Yeah. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, Reisner similarly. Lloyd Cushionberry is definitely the weakest link from this line. I do have a question for you. If you had to bet ROI on the offensive line this season, return on investment.
Quinn Miners.
You think? Okay, I was going to say the worst.
Oh, ROI. The worst. Ooh, that's a tough. I mean, Quinn Miners is your best value pick because he's cheap and he's good. That's an easy number one. Bad is bad. So I don't care what. If you're cheap and bad. It's almost like you can't divide a number by 0. It becomes undefined.
True. Yeah.
So that kind of takes Lloyd Cushionberry. It's like, I don't care that he's cheap. He hasn't been good enough. He's hurting your team. Mm-hmm. So that's still the worst for me. It's not like a straight math equation where this guy's making $10 million and he's a 1. This guy's making $5 million and he's also a 1. He's a 0.75. Yeah. Well, the 0.75 stinks. I mean, they both stink. I think to your point here is, did you overpay for your left guard? Probably. Did you overpay for your right tackle? Probably. Hmm. If those guys play as they're expected, you don't care. It's okay.
Yeah.
Did you overpay for Russell Wilson? Yes. Was that the problem? No. The problem was he stunk.
Yeah.
That was the problem. So the worst ROI is still Lloyd Cushionberry because he is a detriment, and hopefully that changes. He has been a liability on your offensive line for the 2 years that I've been covering this team.
Yeah. What I was getting at was my concern of the return on investment for Mike McGlinchey.
Right.
Given like if he plays like a C minus,
$18 million right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge money.
Yeah. And if he plays like a C minus right tackle,
right.
That would be, I mean, there's a reality out there where what we saw from Cam Fleming last season is better than what we get from Mike McGlinchey. And Fleming was, 1/18 of the price.
Right.
So that's
again, a $15 million C is still better than a $1.5 million F.
Yeah. In the immediacy, maybe not long term.
Right. Again, for one season.
Yes.
For next year, if I'm still stuck with a $15 million C and I can move on from my $1 million, but for right now, for this season, your Lloyd Cushionberry is the biggest problem you've got on the offensive line. And if that changes, great. If he plays at a C level and becomes a top 18, moves out of the bottom 5 and just becomes an adequate NFL player, a WAR. We love that stat. The WAR, wins against replacement. The replacement is an average level player. If he becomes a 0 on a WAR where he's as good as an average NFL center, you're okay. You're fine with that. Then he becomes worth what he's making.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. It's we're worried about Cushionberry. And we've been worried about Cushionberry since, God, you can go back to January last season saying the Broncos need to replace the center position, and they haven't yet. We'll see what happens. We're hoping that having 2 more stalwart, stronger guys on the offensive line will help them. Maybe you can scheme up a bit more help for Cushionberry. The big issue with Cushionberry is that he stayed on a lot of his blocks, but he is constantly on skates, getting back. I mean, that's why his, so we talked about this before, Scott. That's why his pass rush grade for PFF or ESPN is always really high, because they equate keeping your hands on a guy as a win. But you and I watching them can see that he's getting his hands on the guy, but getting knocked back 3 or 4 yards.
Yeah,
that's not a win.
I can put my hands on a guy. Give me a corner and line him up. They'll keep a hands on a guy.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that they're being effective. Andrew Lampy, feels like it's been a minute since we've seen you. So welcome back in and thank you for the stars. Appreciate the support. Hope your summer has been doing well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. But that's the big concern with Cushionberry is that his ability to anchor, especially with a quarterback who probably needs a strong pocket in front of him because otherwise he can't see and will struggle over the middle of the field. So hopefully with, somebody with the mass and strength that Powers has, Quinn Miners a year better in pass protection. Let's be honest, the technique for pass protection for Quinn Miners varied greatly last season. There were a few, olays, and the guy went around him where he'd kind of lunge and miss a guy. But if those two can be better around him, then maybe you can work in a little bit more double teams and protect Cushionberry where he's not getting blown back guys into his chest and whatnot. He's a long player. He's kind of, like I've said on here, he's built like a bullfrog. So his base and his ability to anchor is not amazing. But maybe with double teams, you can at least, tread water there for a season. But same with the defensive line. Broncos had so many areas that they needed to improve upon. Limited draft capital. You weren't gonna be able to fix everything in one season. So center is one where we're sitting here with our fingers crossed. I don't maybe bring in Ben Jones, maybe do something else, but I feel like we're in a fingers crossed for that one for this season.
Right. And Jeremy says a concern with Cushionberry is how he loses. Mostly it's not his brain that he just gets bullied. There's no light bulb to go on for strength. I agree and then disagree on this. Jeremy, you've heard me talk about it before. Yes, he's giving Russell Wilson way too many lap dances in any kind of running play, passing play. It doesn't matter. If there's a guy head up over Cushionberry's in your offensive backfield. That's bad.
Yeah.
The other part, if there's not, and it's a passing, Keith was just talking about stunts. The Broncos' ability or lack thereof to pick up stunts was mind-boggling. If they just crisscross, tackle goes towards it, or the defensive tackle goes towards the offensive tackle, and the end loops around behind him, that end, every single time I watched, came through free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's experience, and there's your brain. Oh, he's really smart. Really? Well, then how come they don't know how to pick up a stunt?
Yeah.
The guys, we're staring here. We're locked on the guy. Hey, look at him. He's going over there. Oh, what about this 300-pound dude that just went flying by me to my left? It was absolutely baffling how bad this team was at the basics of the offensive line, Nick.
Yeah, the communication, the chemistry. I don't know how much of that is on Butch Berry, who is
I'm not putting 100% of the blame on anybody. Yeah. There's lots to go around. What did Sean Payton say? Everybody's got dirty hands. There's plenty to go around.
Yeah. Butch Berry, Lloyd Cushionberry, Russell Wilson. I mean, you bring in
how do you not correct that? Just get in his way on a stunt and a pass. Talking about keeping your hands on somebody, Nick. You just got to get in the way of a guy on a stunt. It's okay if you get run over you. Then he has to jump over you at least.
Yep.
It was terrible.
It was really bad. And we'll see how it looks this season. I don't think there's going to be as much acceptance for that level of just mental errors. I know that for a fact. That's one of the first things that's coming in. We're going to have these guys running windbreakers for mistakes at training camp coming out here. So hopefully it'll get better. Getting better here. We got Alec Blaze coming in, $4.99. Says that, am I the only one insanely excited for our wide receiver room? I haven't heard much people insanely excited for the wide receiver room, but you do have a lot of quality or a lot of potential quality options. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy entering year 4 of his career. Looked like the light bulb maybe came on for him at the end of last season. Now you have a offensive mind that hopefully can maximize him. Really think that based on all the rumors we saw from Jerry Jeudy this offseason and the fact that he wasn't constantly on social media, makes me think that maybe, he came in the league, 20, 21 years old?
Yeah,
now he's going to be
he may be 23 right now.
23, 24, 25. I mean,
look it up while you're monologuing here.
He's just hitting his adulthood stage here. So maybe, maybe the light bulb clicks for him now. That would be incredible for the Broncos. Excited about that. I'm curious to see what Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton look like in this offense. And then you have Marvin Mims, who the Broncos traded up for to go get. And he's been a very fun, I think he's an extremely intelligent young person as well. And what is the all-time high school Texas receiving yards or catch? I think it's receiving yards player, and was really highly rated out of there. Had a really good season in Oklahoma, despite the offense having the letdown post Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams last year. So I'm excited about the wide receiver room as well. I don't know if I'm insanely excited though, because I don't know if I see a true absolute monster on that unit. I think Jerry Jeudy can be very good. I think Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick can be very good. I see a lot of very good 2s and 3s. I don't know if I see a no doubt number 1 dominant kind of guy, and that would keep me from being insanely excited.
Yeah, and I think part of this, Alec, appreciate the support coming in. Is there was a lot of talk about trading this guy. Cortland Sutton, they want was it a 3rd round pick? Okay, It's hard when there's talk constantly about the team trying to move on from your assets, trying to trade players. It's hard to be overly excited about them. Oh, the Broncos want Jerry Jeudy, they'd take a high 2nd pick. No, or a 1st. They're trying to move Cortland Sutton, they'd take a 3rd. I think that has helped hedge, going back to the theme of the show, hedge the bets on some of the players some of the fans about getting too excited about the wide receiver room. I said all along, a 3rd round pick for Cortland Sutton makes 0 sense to me unless there's something else going on behind the scenes. We mentioned fresh faces, new blood, leadership, new voices, all that type of stuff. The money in there. But it makes more sense to me for the money, Nick, to do it next year. If you want to make a move, because again, you're probably not going to have 3 $15 million receivers on the roster. And that's where Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy will be next year. Yeah. Insanely excited. I think it's actually being slept on. So are you the only one insanely excited? Probably, because I think the wide receiver room is being slept on by this team because of the loss of faith in Russell Wilson, and the people are forgetting about the weapons that are actually there. Michaela Israel coming in with a super sticker. Thank you. We appreciate your support as well. Saw your note is, the friend of Bill type of thing, along with Clayton. So congratulations. Hope things are going well for you.
Yeah, congrats to you guys. Coming back to the wide receiver room, very talented. We've talked about it on here a good bit as well, because it's the off season and we kind of, sometimes themes re-show themselves, but it's not so much the talent of this room, but how is the talent going to be used? Cortland Sutton, is he going to end up being a big slot type? I mean, one of his best routes is the slant, and we saw Michael Thomas is the slant boy,
was the slant god.
Yeah, right. In the bigger body type. I mean, Sutton, I don't think is as good in the contested catch area, but he can be out there and become maybe the big slot. Jerry Jeudy last year kind of was unlocked when he went from that slot Z to more of an X position. So what does it look like with all these guys out there? Tim Patrick back in the fold. And how many targets are there even available? Is this going to be a high volume pass offense? Everything that I'm reading as far as the moves this offseason say, no, it's going to be balanced, maybe even trending to being one of the more run heavy teams this year. So what is the overall volume going to look like? I'd rather them be efficient than, high volume, but not efficient personally. But I'm really curious just to see the roles and what the offense looks like this season more than probably anything else.
Move? I can think of one. Big move that was made this offseason by the Broncos that wasn't geared towards getting tougher in the run and against the run. I can think of one.
The trade up for Marvin Mims?
Marvin Mims.
Yep.
This guy. Yep. What Alex says, Marvin Mims. That's the only one I can really think of that wasn't geared towards being a tougher team in the running game and against run. Everything else is about becoming more physical. That's not an accident. Lou 101 comes in with a good point, and I want to kind of bounce this one back to you as well, Nick. It says Payton has shown he's not done bringing in new blood. I don't see how he'd be any more impressed with Cushionberry than we are. I'm sure he'll have options once the roster cut down time starts across the league, because there's if you go 90-man rosters, or does it go up to even like 95? 90-man rosters, there's 30 players per team. There's going to be 1,000 players available via waiver wire come September 1st, August 30th, or somewhere in there on the big cut down day. The question here, though, how could he be impressed? All right, open camp. We're all there. We've got tickets. We watch. What did we start off this show by saying was the biggest concern on this team, Nick?
Defensive line depth.
Interior defensive line. Yep. My God, Lloyd Cushionberry looks great. He's beating up the guys that we said aren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have to hedge your bets. Again, theme of the show, hedge your bets when you're watching internal work going on.
Yeah.
Is he that good, or is the guy you going against that bad? Is the offense playing well, or are they throttling down the defense? Is a wide receiver beating this corner? Is he that good, or does this corner need to be somewhere else? So how could he be impressed? Lloyd Cushionberry could have a fantastic preseason and still not be good enough.
Yeah, I would not get too excited if Lloyd Cushionberry is looking great against the likes of Jonathan Harris, Jordan Jackson, Elijah Garcia, Tyler Lancaster, PJ Mustafer. I mean, just the names we're talking about there as far as the back end of the defensive line. Hopefully one of those guys will step up. I heard that PJ Mustafer at least looked okay in training or mini camp, rookie mini camp, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe he can step up and be a guy who's actually pretty good at Penn State. Doesn't offer very much in pass rush, but he's a actual body type that can come off. So come off the bus and look like, oh, that's an NFL player, which does matter for positions like the trenches. Obviously, there are always exceptions to the rules, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt to have a typecast kind of guys. Ozzy Wombat coming in here with a really cool, looks like a galaxy photo there, Milky Way photo there from Australia. It says, hi from Perth, Australia, 10:30 p.m. Do you guys think we'll be a 60-40 run over receive or 60-40 receiving over run? I don't think there was a single team in the NFL that was had more runs than passes last season. And I think even going like 55-45 run to pass would be one of the more, or pass to run would be one of the more heavier run teams in the NFL. So I think you're going to see the Broncos be in the top 10 in terms of their run to pass ratio, but it's probably going to be somewhere from like 50-50 to 60-40.
I was just looking it up because I was like, I think the most run heavy team was the Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And they had 558 rushing attempts against 377. Quick math on that becomes what, 922? I'll just call it 930. So 558 divided by 930 becomes exactly 60%. No,
60
I don't think it'll be that run heavy either way. And I think they were by far the most run heavy team. I think you will see it more runs, and I think you'll see more efficient runs. But you want balance in this. The Falcons are going to be a run heavy team. They're not running 60% of the time. But the Bears, because Justin Fields ran out of passing plays so often, it skewed that number very heavily. And 60% was by far, if I think I'm right on this, was by far the most run heavy team.
I just pulled it up for 2022. The Bears threw the ball on 43.81% of the time. Atlanta 44.71, Baltimore 49.82, Philly 50.26.
Those were probably called plays, so they probably said, they dropped back and passed because the actual rushing attempts versus passing was 60%.
It probably is, yeah. Scrambles are counted as broken plays are counted as passing plays. Mm-hmm. The big thing here with a lot of these teams that were listed here in the bottom 5, 6 is that they fielded rushing quarterbacks. And the Broncos, I don't see them using a lot of quarterback options with Russell Wilson this season. Just don't think it's a smart move for them. So I think the Broncos will probably be somewhere in the bottom 10 or top 10, whatever you want to look at it in terms of balance. I think they pass probably a little bit more than a lot of teams, but I think they'll be in the 50-50 to 55-45 pass to run range this season.
Yeah, which is still, again, it will be, you expect it to be pretty close to being balanced. You've got to have a balanced team. And again, we just mentioned that every single move the Broncos have made have been to become more, to be stronger in the running game and against the run.
Yep. So we got a DWJ coming in here saying, sorry, dropping in late. Have you guys talked about Wazurike? Yes, we did. We talked about it. You can go back to the front, and it's 8:30, so we got to wrap it on up here, guys. Broncos bring in, or Wazurike is suspended for gambling for the year. We'll see what happens with him. Broncos questions on the interior defensive line become even more of a question mark going forward. Probably have to bring in somebody. We'll see. And then I talked a little bit about Russell Wilson and the balance of the offense and the personalities and scheme between Russell Wilson and head coach Sean Payton being the key to the Broncos team this season. Key storyline, according to Eric Edholm of NFL.com. Rob Bucksbaum comes in, $2, says, when do your Monday shows start up again? Probably sometime in the next 3 weeks or so. Definitely before the end of the year. We haven't talked about it so much yet, but I'm sure they'll be starting up here again pretty soon. I do have some more backpacking trips and whatnot still on the books for August, because really backpacking season out here doesn't start until the end of July because the snow doesn't really melt until then anyway. So August through mid-September is when you have a chance to get out there. We'll be up on it here pretty soon. I'm sure Scott and I will talk about that after I get back from my Idaho trip.
Yeah, I would think the latest I'd probably want to do it, Rob, is August 14th. That's the first Monday after the first preseason game. So, once preseason starts, we want to start breaking down games and be on here for that. So the first preseason game, I just looked it up, said August 11th. Told you it's coming fast, y'all. Coming really fast. So that would be the answer for me that would be the latest for me.
Yeah. We'll put it on the calendars. There we go. But guys, we got to get on out of here. I got to walk the dog and get on into work. I will be back again tonight, and then Scott and I will be back again next Wednesday morning when we're back. I'm not sure what the plan is for next Thursday and
We won't
Tuesday.
be here Thursday. I will not be available Thursday, and Nick's out. So we'll be back next Tuesday for Broncos for breakfast.
So a week from today. Michael comes in, says, great show today. Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos and buck 'em. Buck you too. Thank you so much, Michael. Make sure you guys are following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendall MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as the ticker says underneath, if you guys are joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like the channel, like the show, and share it on your social media platforms. Scott, we will see you again later tonight. It'll be Carl and I, but you'll be joining us on the back end on the ones and twos. So we appreciate that. You guys have a great rest of your day. We'll see you on Building the Broncos tonight. But until then, make sure you continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.